Hello and welcome to this section of the Algebra Tutor. In this section we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about how to factor out the greatest common factor. And to be honest with you, it's one of the most important skills you'll understand and need to master in algebra. It's also one of the easiest things to do once you know how to do it. So the first thing I want to impress upon you is that anytime you hear the word factor, or anytime you read the word factor out, or anytime that your teacher or your professor says, hey, go factor this, I want you to think that that word factor means pull out. And I'll show you what I mean when I talk about pull out in a second. But anytime you say factor an expression, I want you to think about pulling something out of that expression. You know, think of yourself as the dentist. You got some pliers and you go in for the teeth and you pull it out. So you're going to have these big expressions and you're going to be factoring things out of those expressions, which means just reaching in there and pulling things out, kind of like a rabbit out of a hat. And you're going to find out that it's not that hard to do. So let's talk about some numbers before we talk about any letters. What about the number 12? Okay, what about the number 12? There's multiple ways to write the number 12. You can write it as the number 12. You can also write it as 2 times 6, because we know that's equal to 12. You can also write it as 3 times 4. We know that that's equal to 12. We also can write it as 1 times 12, because that's equal to 12 as well. So if I ask you, all right, take 12 and factor out a 3, what do you think that's going to mean? Well, the word factor, I just told you 4 times, it means pull out. So what I'm telling you to do is pull out a 3, all right? I'm telling you to pull out a 3. So if I pull out a 3 from 12, I have to write my 3 down and I'll write my parentheses. What's going to be left over if I pull out that 3? If I reach inside of this number 12 and pull out a 3, then the only thing that can be left is 4 in here. Why? Because 3 times 4 is 12. So when I say pull it out, I don't just mean magically pull it out. I mean go and remove it and then make the expression still equal 12 in the end. So when you pull it out, you're pulling it outside the parentheses, and whatever's left inside, you have to make it such that whenever you multiply everything together, you get 12 back to begin with, which is kind of like the simple example I'm giving you here. If I tell you to, instead of this, if I tell you to factor out a 2 from 12, then what do? Here's your 12, you want to factor out a 2. Well, you have to pull the 2 out. What's going to be left inside? It has to be 6, because the whole expression, we're basically saying these are equal. We're saying this is equal to 12. When I reach into 12 and I pull out a 2, what's left has to still multiply together to give me 12. That's why I wrote these down to remind you of what 12 can be multiplied together. So these are called the factors of 12. The 2 and the 6, they're factors of 12. The 3 and the 4, they're factors of 12. So when you pull out a 2, you have to have a 6 left over to make it equal to 12 after you multiply. When you pull out a 3, you have to have a 4 left over, so that when you do your multiplication, you'll still have 12. So that's all in terms of numbers, right? And you can do these examples with any number you want, but we need to eventually start working in terms of algebra. So let me erase the board and I'll show you how to factor a simple algebra expression. All right, what if my expression to you is 3x plus 6? And I'm asking you to factor this expression. And by the way, when I say factor, I'm trying to find the greatest common factor between both of these things. Basically, what I'm going to try to do is look at both of these terms and figure out what's really common between these two terms, and then pull that number out. And it's a way to kind of reverse simplify the expression.